Hey, it's Cal from RideWrap here, and today we're going to do an install of a tailored protection kit on a Santa Cruz bike's Hightower. Across the board, Santa Cruz frames look pretty similar. They've got a one-piece rear end, and this is their typical suspension platform. So here we've got the diagram for the tailored protection kit. This comes with every tailored protection kit that goes out. It references a 3D diagram, so this is the frame itself. We've got pieces 1 through 14 on this bike. So the reason why we number the pieces is to really help the customer at home, so you guys. So piece number 1 is often the drive side chainstay. The reason we say to do an install on the drive side chainstay first is it's a smaller area, it's lower to the ground, so by the time we've got a guard that sits over the top, you can't actually see it. It's a more functional piece than maybe a top tube or a down tube where it needs to be aesthetically pleasing, needs to be dialed, your alignment needs to be good, and your squeegee technique needs to be good at that point. So working from piece number 1 right the way through to piece number 14 in that sequence is going to give you the best results. Okay guys, so this one I've actually prepped. Wheels are off, the chain is off, and any snap-on or screwed-on guards. So this one in particular had a snap-on drive side chainstay guard, so that one has been removed. We've got a couple of guards on the down tube and on the lower bottom bracket area. Also, there's a small guard that sits over the shock here. They have all been removed. The only guard that has not been removed from this bike is actually the seat stay guard. The reason for that is because it's glued onto the frame. So we don't need to remove that. The tailored protection kit is going to be installed around it. So this bike has been lightly ridden. So we've put it on the stand, we've deep cleaned it with the hose and some bike cleaner. And the final stage that we're going to go through here before we do an install that tailored protection kit is actually use the pre-install cleaning wipes. These are provided with each of the tailored protection kits. They come in the install tool pack, and we're going to take one of the wipes and we're going to really focus on the front end of the bike, paying particular attention to any pivots, any points in which you would expect grease to be built up. Those are the areas that will bite you. Dirt and debris will fall from those areas. And then the second wipe, we're going to jump into the rear end and do exactly the same, focusing on those areas where the linkage is going to hold dirt, debris and grease. These wipes will really kind of help you get to the nitty gritty and get the paint in a position where you can install a protection kit successfully. So the next step is install solution. We're going to mix that. So the install solution concentrate comes with your tool pack in the tailored protection kit, also with a pipette. For more details on that, jump into the detailed video that we already have on YouTube. It's going to explain the ins and the outs of install solution, the do's and the don'ts, and really why we use that. So the first thing we want to do when we come to install is spray your protection kit before you remove the piece from the film itself. The next step is actually spraying down all of the area in which you're going to do the installation. So piece number 1, as we spoke about, is on this drive side chainstay. So we're going to make sure we've got lots of install solution right across that, inside and out. So now at this stage, I've just sprayed an additional bunch of install spray on there, and I'm going to make sure that these key alignment points are dialed in, ready to go. So taking the time to align the rear end of this protection piece up against the dropout area is going to be key here. There's a little relief just on the bottom side here. That at the moment is actually sat a little low, so I'm actually going to readjust that, pull it back up. The relief at this stage should be sat just on this lower edge, allowing the material to just work around. So as we've got really good alignment here, we're actually looking for a 3mm offset against this dropout area. The reason for the 3mm is to allow for the pieces to sit uniform against all the pieces. So if you can get a nice 3mm gap on this piece against the dropout, we're actually going to end up with 3mm against the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. It's going to really allow us to fit the kit in the way that it's intended. So the first thing I'm going to do now, I've actually offset off the dropout 3mm. I'm going to squeegee the face of this piece, really making sure that there is nothing on this largest area on the face there. So we've squeegeed that face, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to just roll this round. We're going to work the squeegee over the edge, using my hand there just to tension the material. Again, just using my left hand to tension the material on the back side, making sure that we've got no moisture left on the top edge. I'm actually going to reapply some moisture on this front side here. That's going to allow the piece to just sit nicely. So now I'm going to work from that front face that we squeegeed down first, and roll the squeegee down and underneath to remove that moisture. At this point I'm going to use the microfiber just to kind of seal down those edges and draw the moisture from the edge of the adhesive. So at this stage I'm going to just spray this front side, the back side there, the adhesive, with some just water. So that, I guess, is kind of a pro tip. And that's going to remove the install concentrate on these areas in which they're a little tougher to adhere. Okay, piece number 1 is done for now. Okay, we're going to hit piece number 2 at this point. Piece number 2 is the non-drive side chainstay. Again, spraying down that protection kit to make sure that there's no dirt or debris that jumps onto the material as it's removed from the kit. I'm going to spray down the frame again, making sure that there's lots of moisture on there. And again, taking the time to ensure that this initial placement is aligned nicely. We've got 3mm gap from the dropout right the way up to the front lower pivot there. So now we've got a really nice alignment between those two pieces, and we're just gonna, again, as we did piece number 1, we're gonna squeegee down that center section, working our way from the center and then up and over the top with the install. Again, tensioning with my left hand and then rolling over the top side with the squeegee, making sure that there's no install solution or moisture left on that front face. So just as I did on the piece number 1 there, I'm just going to use actual water, no install mix, just to really rinse out those edges and allow the adhesive to stick down as it's needed to. Again, drawing that moisture out with the microfiber towel. Okay, piece number 3, we're gonna work on that, which is the lower bridge. So the piece that sits between the drive side and the non-drive side chainstays. I'm gonna make sure I've got lots of moisture on the back side here, and also lots of moisture on the frame itself. So as before, we're looking for a nice 3mm gap. If you've got good alignment against your dropouts and you've installed the pieces with no stretch, which is a requirement, you saw that I didn't stretch the pieces, you will be perfectly aligned at 3mm from your chainstay on the drive side, and then also perfectly aligned with 3mm from your non-drive side. So at this stage, I'm just going to take the time to make sure my alignment's nice and straight. I'm going to grab my squeegee, and again, as before, look for that largest surfaced area and really kind of make sure that we've squeegeed that area down, removed all that moisture. So, as we get to this area here, we can actually just use the microfiber towel to just push that over the edge, making sure that there's, with some pressure on your finger, making sure that we've got no moisture sat just under there. So running my finger around the edges there, just making sure that edges are all sat down nicely, and the microfiber is just helping draw that moisture from the very edge of the material. Perfect. So as you can see, we've got really nice alignment here, 3mm gap, and also on the drive side chainstay. Underneath here, we're going to jump into piece number 4. Again, what we're going to do here is we're going to spray down the protection kit itself, peel back the piece number 4, and then also spray lots of install. So what we're looking for here is, again, 3mm gaps. This might be a little bit more challenging because there's lots of curves that the material is actually taking into consideration here. But as you can see, I've aligned this piece nicely. We've got 3mm down this side. And now what I'm going to do is just realign here and get myself sat in there. As you can see in this instance, we're a little bit tight on this side, but we've got a really nice gap here. We've got nice uniform gaps on this side. I'm going to squeegee down this area, making sure those pesky rocks don't get that front edge of that rear end. Again, my last step of installing the piece is to just hit the edges with the microfiber towel, making sure that it's drawn any of that moisture out of there. Piece number 5 is the seat stay on that non-drive side. That's going to allow us to make sure we've got good alignment now against that upper pivot point, and also that rear dropout that we were focused on the chainstay as well. So I'm going to loosely install this piece. We're going to really make sure our alignment's good before we start to squeegee anything down. I'm going to gently rest the material, making sure that we've got our pieces sat nicely with brake cables going around any mounting points, as well as making sure we've got good alignment against those defining features on either end of the piece. So we're going to focus on that flat middle surface again before we start squeegeeing it over any edges, trapping moisture in there. So we're going to focus on squeegeeing that front face. The reason I've just sprayed some more solution on there is just to help that squeegee glide. When there's no moisture on the exterior of the protection kit, it actually just becomes challenging. The squeegee will bind against the material and will pull, which is really not really what we want. So I'm going to work down to the lower side on this seat stay first, making sure I've got no moisture in the front face, rolling the squeegee around the edge, making sure we've got no moisture on that lower edge as well. So as you can see, the material just started to stick just a touch. We don't want that. We're going to use some more install solution. We're going to make sure that we've got lots of moisture on there, allowing us to really squeegee any excess moisture from underneath instead of trapping it under there. Taking the time to draw that moisture out the edges with the microfiber towel. I'm going to move on to the next piece at this point, piece number 6. Piece number 6, 5-side seat stay. Again, we're going to take these defining features on the frame. We're going to look at 3mm offset from that front pivot on the top side, and And we're also going to look for a nice 3mm gap against this cable port on this back side. We're going to gently just rest this round and make sure that we don't have any touching points across the chainstay guard with that being stuck on. So we're just going to slightly adjust this up before we do any squeegeeing. So now, just as we have done with each of the other pieces, we're going to take the front center face, and we're going to squeegee and put some pressure on there, really get that adhesive locked in. Once we've got that front face all locked in, just gently tensioning with my left hand here, getting the piece to a place where we can install over the edge and remove that moisture. Okay, as we have done with the other pieces, as we get to these edges, I'm just going to use a little bit of just regular water instead of the install mix to wash out that solution and allow it to stick. So we're going to rinse the back side again, making sure there's lots of moisture on there with just regular water to rinse out that soap. And we're going to squeegee down this, get those edges to sit nicely. Okay, piece number 6 is done. I've locked down those edges with the microfiber just as we have previously. You're finding like this here, I wouldn't worry too much about that. We're going to come back around and we're going to make sure that those are all kind of dried out and locked down once the rest of the pieces are installed. Okay, piece number 7. I'll spray down the protection kit again, making sure there's no debris. Piece number 7 is a smaller filler piece. It sits up against this chainstay bridge here. What we're looking for is a nice 3mm gap. We use the water just like we did on the other pieces to rinse the edge. And the microfiber towel just to seat those edges down. So as you can see, I actually manipulated this piece just a little bit here just to make sure we've got a really nice 3mm gap here and we've got good alignment up to this little guard here on the chainstay that was installed at factory. So next piece, is number 8. Number 8 is a same piece as number 7, but for the non-drive side. So again, we're going to look for good alignment against the seat stay piece, and then nice alignment against the lower bolt hole. Okay, piece number 9. We're now on to the front end of the bike. So we've taken the time to learn and understand on the rear. Some say a little bit more complex than the front end, but I think really getting to grips with the squeegee technique, making sure your install concentrate is locked and loaded, and then we should be off to the races here as we hit number 9 on the head tube. Okay, so piece number 9, we're going to spray down the piece again, making sure that there's no debris coming from the material. Make sure we've got lots of moisture on the head tube piece, on the back, on the adhesive. So this piece can be quite challenging. There's lots of cables in the way if the bike is built. Taking the time to understand exactly how it's going to kind of sit is certainly a good approach. So as you go to do the install, you'll notice that there's some V's in the top side here. So this top here, also one in the very bottom, it's a really good indicator and reference to the center line of that head tube. So as I've gone to do the install here, I'm referencing those pieces of the V's on the piece, and I'm also referencing the top. So I've got a nice gap up top here. It's also a match to the gap on the bottom. We've got really good alignment around these cable ports, and we've got really good alignment on these other cable ports on the non-drive side too. So at this stage, I'm confident in saying, okay, it's equal against these cable ports. I think I need to put a squeegee line down the center. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So as I'm squeegeeing down that center line, I'm just making sure that the piece hasn't shifted. So I'm just going to keep referencing back to the points in which we know are a defining feature. So those cable ports are certainly a good one. So for me at this stage, I want to make sure that we don't have any tension in the material. So as you saw when I placed the film, I installed it essentially with a relaxed fit. So I'm going to just lift this back. I'm going to make sure I've reapplied some install solution, just making sure that the material is not going to shift. So I'm going to just gently squeegee. So as you can see, we've got a good alignment around the Santa Cruz head tube badge, and we've got a nice even gap top and bottom on that head tube. So as I move to this next side, I'm going to just pull this back, reapply some moisture, and then squeegee down, making sure that the material does not shift as I squeegee. So I'm not going to squeegee too hard here because I want to make sure that I've got good reference points for my top tube. And if that needs to be adjusted to make sure I've got good 3mm gaps, then I'm able to just readjust that as needed. I'm going to do piece number 10, which is indeed the top tube piece. Making sure there's lots of moisture. Not only does the head tube have an alignment point for the center line, the top tube also does. So again, that's a really good reference point for you to work with as you go to align the center of that top tube. Looking at the rear, also making sure that we're aligned. So gently. At this stage, this is where I would urge you to check your head tube to top tube gaps. So as with all the other pieces, we're looking for a 3mm gap. This is pretty near bang on. And also even to this side. So making sure that you've got a 3mm gap from the headset to your top tube will in turn ensure that you have a 3mm gap against your head tube protection piece and your top tube. Again, as with the other pieces, taking the opportunity to really kind of squeegee that top surface before you get to the edges and the frame lines is going to be beneficial for you. So now as I've squeegeed that edge, I'm actually going to work my way gently over the top side and onto this edge. The technique that I like to use is squeegee rolling over. This ensures that there's no moisture trapped on that top edge. And then once we're happy and we've not got any moisture on this surface, we're then going to roll underneath and do the underside. So again, using that same technique of rolling the squeegee. So again, using the technique of rolling over the edge. Just going to make sure that we've got no moisture. And then just as the other side, we're going to make sure that we've got no moisture on the side surface before we then move to the underside. Okay, now we're going to tackle this rear tongue that comes up this side. First of all, we need to make sure that it's not shifted. If it has shifted, we need to realign it. In this instance, we've actually still got a really nice straight line. It's centered, which is positive. But what we've actually got here is a little bit of moisture sat underneath these areas where the material has started to stick. So So what we want to do is we're going to remove that and we're going to go back here. We're going to spray with lots of moisture. This time we're going to use water. The reason for using the water in this is so that we get a faster attack. What we're going to do is we've used water to rinse out that install solution. We're going to squeegee with lots of pressure at this point. Once we've squeegeed, the reason it keeps lifting back up is because the moisture is just creeping back under there. So what we're going to use here is the microfiber towel to draw that moisture out. And applying some pressure for 5 to 10 seconds will certainly help promote adhesion. And then again, we're going to take the same approach for the next side. We're going to work our way down, draw out that moisture using the microfiber towel, applying some pressure. And as you can see, a little bit of pressure applied. That's sat nicely now. I'm going to just make sure my edges are all locked down before we move on to the next piece. Okay, piece number 11 is the back of the seat tube. So again, we're going to take a moment to just spray down the material, as well as reference the V, the centerline V that we spoke about, that also is on the head tube and it's also on the top tube. So for this piece, the V is going to sit nicely in the center and it's going to sit 3 millimeters from the defining features of these lower guard bolt holes. As we did with the top tube and the head tube, we're going to gently just rest this up and then we're just going to check our alignment points. We're going to make sure we've got really good 3 millimeter alignment. We're going to say, are we level across the top tube into the seat tube, as well as do we have a nice even 3 millimeter gap here that runs down the seat tube, but also referencing both sides of the bike to ensure that it is straight. So this one, we have really good alignment and we're going to squeegee down the center line and we're going to work our way from the center all the way to the edges. So the next piece that we're going to tackle is piece number 12. This is the largest surface area that we're going to do an install today. And we're just going to make sure that we've got the bike held in a way that's going to be beneficial to us for doing the install. And hold. And make sure we've got lots of moisture on the down tube itself. So the next piece is the down tube piece, piece number 12. Santa Cruz bikes have really good reference points on the down tube because they often have a shuttle guard installed, or certainly the bolt holes for the shuttle guards. So what we're looking for here is to center the holes on the down tube, and then also making sure that this lower down tube piece is also centered. As we rest the material around in a relaxed fit, we should have, if we're aligned on the lower side, so the down tube bolt holes and the lower bottom bracket guard, we should have really good alignment here for our shock mount. Also for our water bottle cage mounts. So I'm pretty happy here. If there is a shift, if one side is higher than the other, it means that the material is not actually straight. So I would suggest that you go back to the center of your down tube underneath and reposition. So I'm happy with my alignment. So what I'm actually going to do at this stage is just pull back from here and reapply some moisture to make sure that the material's not starting to dry out. Then I'm going to squeegee that lower down tube underneath, down the center, working my way to the edge. Once we're happy with that, we're then going to start working on one of the sides. I'm going to do the drive side first. I'm going to, again, reapply some moisture, install solution. This is a really good opportunity to ensure that we have a really nice, uniform head tube gap. So here we've got a nice gap and it's even. I'm really happy with how that gap is. So I'm going to work my way over the edge and I'm going to squeegee. So I'm going to work my way around to the next side here, making sure that I've got lots of moisture applied again, pulling it back to this edge in which I know that there is no moisture after there. I'm going to gently roll this material around, as I said before, as a relaxed fit. So as I did on the other side with this shock mount area, I'm just going to rinse with some plain water. Okay, we're going to turn our attention now to this upper tongue. On the underside of this down tube. So I'm going to use just regular water just to rinse this area. It's really going to promote that adhesion. And I'm going to take the center. I'm going to be really intentional around placement on the edge, and then I'm going to work the squeegee up and around to squeegee out water. Same again with this side, I'm going to be really intentional with that placement. So I'm going to say I want it to be here, and then I'm going to squeegee to get that piece to sit in there really nicely, allowing us that really nice 3mm gap. So earlier in the video we were working on the head tube and I didn't press the squeegee particularly hard because I referenced that I might want to realign this once we get the top tube and the down tube on. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to use some new moisture. I'm going to take the time to, again, ensure that the alignment is really nice against the down tube and the top tube. And as you can see, we've got a nice 3mm gap, a nice 3mm gap, and a nice 3mm gap against the top tube, which is exactly what we're going for. Number 13 is lower down tube, stroke bottom bracket on the non-drive side. So I'm going to spray that down as I have done with each of the other pieces. I'm going to make my way around to the lower down tube. I'm going to make sure I've got lots of moisture applied. And then I'm going to make sure that my alignment points on this down tube are all sat nicely. So I'm going for a 3mm gap against my down tube. And then my defining features here is actually this lower pivot point, which is something we're going to make sure we've got good alignment on. Gently, we're going to then squeegee down that front face as we have done with each of the other pieces. Once those pieces are done, on the front surface, I'm then going to just roll over the top edge. And we're going to make sure that there's no moisture left under there. Okay, piece number 14. Piece number 14 is the last piece. I'm just mirrors piece number 13, but on the drive side. So again, just going to spray down that sheet to make sure there's no debris, make sure there's lots of moisture on there. And then we're going to make sure that we've got really good alignment again. So we're going to take the opportunity here to go 3 millimeters from our down tube as we did on the other side. We're going to go and use this edge here as an alignment point, because we're about 3 millimeters from this lower pivot. So again, front surface first, just making sure that the squeegee is doing the work, working our way from the center faces around and down, and that we've got really good alignment here against our cable port 2. And then we've got a nice 3 millimeter gap in the center here against the piece number 13. So the final step with this bike is, as you can see, there is a couple of edges similar to this one here that I'm going to address now, and this one. We're going to walk around, we're going to go piece by piece from piece number 1 right through to piece number 14. We're going to take the time to really fine-tune and check those pieces. Do we have all our edges locked down? Do we have any little bits of perhaps moisture left under there? And there's some tips and tricks in some other videos that we've done on YouTube that talk about how to remove those air pockets and those moisture pockets. But the last thing that I'm going to do today is going to walk through our edges, and we're going to make sure that they're all locked down with a nice clean dry microfiber cloth at this stage. So I'm just going to remove the excess moisture with the microfiber towel first, so I can really kind of see exactly what I'm looking at. Those water droplets can certainly hide things sometimes, so taking the time to just run over it with a microfiber to get rid of the excess water first. So we're going to work through piece number 1 through piece number 14, just double checking our edges, making sure that we're happy with how the adhesive is tacked to the frame from the back of the material. So piece number 1. Make sure that we've got no lifting edges on those. I'm just gonna So now that we've finished the install, there is a key part that we need to kind of bring to you guys. It needs to be left for 12 to 24 hours to allow the adhesive to set. That's going to achieve the best finishes. And at that point, after that 12 to 24 hours, the best way to ensure that you are 100% happy with your install is to again run around the edges and make sure that you've pressed those down with the microfiber. At that stage, there should not be any edges that are lifted. If there is, that's the ideal time to ensure that you apply pressure and that you're able to use the microfiber towel to push that down. Okay, well that's it. We've done a tailored level protection install on a Santa Cruz Hightower. If you want to check out some of the other bikes that we've gone into depth and we've done a full walkthrough on the install, check out the playlist, and thank you for watching.